Where do you get your inspiration from? So one thing that's always occurred to me is people act primarily out of motivation, and when you think about it, at the end of the day, that really is true because we're motivated for many different reasons, right? We're motivated to feed ourselves. We're motivated to find love. We're motivated to succeed at something. We're motivated to get our bodies in shape. Is it reasonable to say that people act out of something other than motivation when they do anything? I don't think so. Even somebody who's completely unfit, somebody who is, you know, just taking advantage of life and not investing in themselves, not pushing themselves to any limits, not growing, not doing anything. Yeah, I believe that they're acting out of motivation, but their motivation is more of a disservice to themselves because it's not causing them to grow. It's not causing them to invest in themselves, to build off of themselves. And that's what's really important when we talk about progression in life, is actually being able to find the right type of motivation, because we're always going to be motivated. I got to be honest, sometimes I wake up in the morning and it's early. I go to the gym, I come back from the gym, I eat breakfast, and honestly there's sometimes where I feel like taking a nap already at 9 a.m. And do I? It depends on what time I get up. There was a day last week where I woke up at 3:45 in the morning. My brain just started going to work and I honestly could not fall back asleep. So yeah, I took a nap at 9:30 in the morning until about 10:30, but I was motivated to rest. That was my motivation. But keep in mind that we are all driven by something. And if you are looking to succeed, if you're looking to grow, if you're looking to take yourself to the next level, you have to be very smart and very conscious of what it is that's driving you. And one of the things that I've done, one of the things that I've really invested myself in doing, is drawing strength from other people's stories. Now, this might not be something that works for everybody, but it's something that definitely works for me because it gives me context. And if you can't look at the story of a very famous person and say, man, that is encouraging. That is so good to know. I need to do that. I need to try that. I need to employ that same tactic in my life. Then, what chance do we have? We've all heard the saying, don't take advice from somebody whose shoes you wouldn't want to fill. And for me, that's a very accurate statement. Why would I want to learn about investing from talking to my mom about investing? If my mother's never been an investor, now I'm not saying anything about my mother, this is a completely hypothetical scenario, but if my mother's never invested financially, if she's never bought stocks, bonds, if she's never paid into mutual funds, CDs, crowd sharing, fund sharing, like vesting in businesses that are growing, if she's never done any of that, why would I sit there and take her advice? Why would I take anybody's advice who hasn't started a business when all I want to do is start a business? If I'm trying to become extremely physically fit and strong and grow and become a CrossFit competitor, or somebody who decides, what, I want a six-pack at the age of 40 and I want to be able to bench 300 pounds. I mean, why would I take advice on getting to that point from somebody other than somebody who's been down that road? I feel like I'd be much better off taking advice, reading Arnold Schwarzenegger's book, than I would, taking advice from a friend who just happens to know somebody who works out a lot, and this is just what they said. So, I've been down this road before. I've already had a video on this. You have to be very careful about who you let feed information into your mind. It's very important. You have to be on top of your game. You have to understand that everybody doesn't have your best interest at heart. In fact, a lot of people, their best interest is just being heard. It's just being the subject matter expert in their eyes in that moment, when truth of the matter is they probably don't know anything, about that topic, or they know very little about that topic and they're just scratching the surface based on a conversation that they overheard with somebody. That is absolutely why I do not like talking about politics, because for me, when I talk to people about politics, this is different depending on where you go. I find that when I'm over in Europe, if somebody wants to have a genuine conversation about politics, a lot of times they're very, very thoughtful about how they approach the topic. They're very, this is how I think about this. This is how I feel about this. But, here, anytime I talk to somebody about politics, it often feels like the only thing that they're doing is regurgitating somebody else's comments, somebody else's analysis. They listen to CNN or Fox News for 5 minutes that morning, and then boom, all of a sudden they're a subject matter expert in this political matter, or they're just dropping their 2 cents into this conversation, not really having any kind of idea about the truth or about, what's going on with that scenario in a much deeper sense, but more because they just want to be heard. They just want to be part of the conversation, and that's fine if that's what they want, but at the same time, you have to really understand that a lot of times people talk just to hear themselves speak. So again, you have to be very careful about who it is that you let feed your mind. Our spouses have a tendency to do that. Our parents have a tendency to do that. Hell, even our children have a tendency to do that with their parents. Everybody feels like they know what's best for you, but not everybody knows what they're talking about, and not everybody has your best interest at heart, even though they might think that they do. If you think about a lot of success stories that you've heard over time, it could have been on TV, it could have been just reading books, it could have been people that you actually know, people who have gone out, they've taken chances, they've done things contrary to all the advice that they were given over time, and they still succeeded. And then they had to look back on that saying, man, if I would have just taken your advice, I would never have succeeded. So I can't believe that you tried to give me that advice, for one, but two, thank God I didn't take it. Thank God I didn't take it. And that seems to be a very common thing for me. So what I've started doing over the course of the last year, coming more and more to that understanding as I get older, and I'll be honest with you, one of the things that really encouraged me in the past is sitting around a lot of people that, now this was on a military deployment, so during that deployment, everybody's just, they're not home, they're not spending their money, they're saving up money, and all of a sudden they start investing their money. So next thing you know, the topic of conversation, anytime the group was together, just always happened to be about investing. Everybody's talking about, oh, you need to do this, you need to chase that stock, oh, you need to invest in this cryptocurrency. Well, guess what? For as much talking as all of those people did, not one of them is any bit richer than they were then today. And I could see that. I could see that real time playing out. It was almost like I was a ghost in the room. In fact, most of the time I was just getting annoyed when this was going on, but everybody was just talking about stocks almost nonstop. I seemed to be the only one who wasn't doing any kind of investing. Now, this happened to be right about the time when Doge was taking off, and everybody, oh, you gotta invest in Doge, and they're dumping thousands of dollars into it. Elon Musk comes on and he makes a comment on Twitter about Doge, and next thing you know, everybody's just pumping money into it. And now I look at it and I'm like, man, people really didn't gain from that. They were just, I don't know, just in that moment, feeling like they had a little bit of information, they had some dispensable cash, and now all of a sudden everybody's becoming subject matter experts. But more important to recognize is the amount of advice and guidance that everyone was giving each other. Oh, no, you need to do this. Oh, no, you need to push that. Oh, you should focus more on this and less on that. It was like the blind leading the blind, and I was a ghost in that scenario. And the funny thing is, I did not contribute. I did not want to be a part of it. I would get annoyed if people started talking about investing around me, because I'm thinking to myself, look, there's people who do this on a professional basis daily. They get paid to do this. They make big bucks, and even they most times are not able to predict the market. So why the hell would you, individual who's making $75,000 a year, have better guidance than that individual? And if I wanted to know more about that individual who does make a lot of money, who has been, the Warren Buffetts of the world, I would read their books. I would go after the information that they've put out, and I would not listen to you, individual who's not in the same position as Warren Buffett. So that's a good segue into this next topic of how over the course of the last year, I've been doing more to read stories on people I find very inspirational. And it doesn't even have to be very inspirational. I just really love reading these underdog stories about businesses who have faced increasingly terrible odds, and they've still come out on top. Now, some of the ones I'll give you is I've got the Coca-Cola book here. That's the Coca-Cola story. I've got Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. The James Dyson book, which was fantastic. I've got No Filter about the start of Instagram. Right now, I'm actually terrible habit of my father's that I was seemed to inherit is reading multiple books at once. So now I'm reading the Ray Kroc book on McDonald's story. I am reading the Richard Branson story and also the Elon Musk story. And I can tell you, oh, of course, and don't let me forget, this by far over the course of the last year, the Lego story has been my absolute favorite. You know why? Because the amount of trials and tribulations that this family faced and overcame to now become the largest toy company in the world fascinates me. And that is essentially what I've drawn from all of these books. Now, they all have different stories. They've all taught me different things. Lego story, under incredibly difficult circumstances, you can endure and succeed. Richard Branson story, don't give up on yourself, no matter what teachers say. Elon Musk, when everything's on the line, continue to have belief in yourself and you will grow. The Coca-Cola story. Phil Knight, the Nike story, loved it. Now, James Dyson, do you know how much debt this man had? That he just kept taking out loan after loan, that he just kept mortgaging himself, that he just kept having his wife sign off on these high-risk loans, which she was happy to do, that they were so poor, she would actually sew clothing for them. They would find ways of making it happen because she believed in him and he believed in himself. He was such an inventive type of person that he just put his mind to work. He had trust in himself. He had faith in himself, but his circumstances were dire. I'd just gotten into the McDonald's book, but of course, like many, I'd seen the Founder, which was a fantastic movie, very inspirational. The Instagram story, one thing that actually taught me was sometimes you need to go back to the drawing board and focus on what matters most, which is what the inventors or the creators of Instagram did. They took this product that was completely different than what Instagram is today. They laid it all out, they wrote it up on a board, and they said, what is the one thing that everybody focuses on most, and let's go after that one thing. And they found that it was pictures. People loved sharing pictures, and they loved sharing pictures with this ability to add filters to them, which is how Instagram grew. Instagram was one of the only companies in history that have ever sold for $1 billion, which had a much higher valuation than $1 billion, because now you have to incorporate the idea that that stock, those shares, actually increased in value. So, they went from just figure $1 a share up to $7 a share. I mean, these things, a $1 billion deal was more like a $7 billion deal. But they had not made a sale. Instagram wasn't making money. It was popular, but it wasn't profitable, and yet it still sold for that. But my absolute favorite, like I said, was the Lego story. Because when you look at this, when you see what this man went through, it is more than inspiring. And if you've ever had a time where you felt that things were too difficult, you had to give up on yourself, you had to quit this idea and move on and stop focusing on trying to build a business, but just fall back in line with everybody else and get the job and go out, make a decent living for 40 hours a week and just live that life day in and day out until you eventually die. If you've ever felt that way, this is the book for you. Now, by pushing this, I'm not getting any kind of profit. I'm not getting anything from this. But what I am getting is knowing that everybody who actually takes this book and reads it is going to grow from that. I get the satisfaction of knowing that my recommendation is helping people to move on. Because I'll tell you, this man who founded Lego was a carpenter who was working on houses, and he would build, extensions, he would build roofs, he would build barns, and people were broke. They were bartering with him. They were paying him with butter and eggs and milk and cheese, things that, you obviously can't pay bills with. On top of that, his wife dies, and now he's left raising not one, not two, not three, but 4 boys. But he's got all this wood. He doesn't have any money, but he's got all this wood. And so he starts to make toys with them. And as he's making toys, he's facing more setbacks. He's facing bankers chasing him for the money that he owes. Not only that, but his house eventually and his workshop, they burn down. He rebuilds. World War II comes along. Nazi occupation or German occupation of his home. German officers living there. The first Lego truck was actually used to actually transport weapons for the Dutch underground resistance. I mean, this is such a fascinating story that I can't imagine why they wouldn't have succeeded. Now, I hope to God that I never have to go through so much to be able to succeed, but it was amazing to me to see that what this family endured and what they went through and how they just stayed resilient. They persevered, they pushed on, and that was an amazing thing. They deserve to be the largest toy company in the world, hands down. They put themselves through everything to get to that point. They never stopped, they never gave up on themselves, and that is what I draw from these books. That is my inspiration. So I continue to read these books because it's important for me to have context. It's important for me to have background. I look at these stories and I think, my God, Elon Musk, like one of the richest men in the world. He swears that there's richer than him, but one of the richest men in the world has gone through essentially the same position that I am in. Being broke, finding a way to make things happen, buying shitty clothing just so we can get by, not having a car, putting everything on the line to make his companies grow. And not just one, but 2, like banking on himself because that's all he had. And he grew. He did it. It's fascinating. The Lego story, the Coca-Cola story, the Instagram story, Phil Knight with Nike. All these stories show me these men who were up to their eyeballs in debt, who didn't have a penny, 2 pennies to rub together, and yet now they're famous, they're wealthy, they've built these gigantic, perfect companies. I mean, it's an amazing story. They're all amazing stories, and you take from every one of them some level of inspiration, because even though they're not all the same, they're generally speaking in the same genre. They're in the same class. Like, they all went through suffering. They all went through their trials. They all went through their tribulations. They all faced setbacks. They faced debt. They faced loss. They faced death. They faced breakups while they were building their companies, and yet they still succeeded. So going through what I have gone through in building my business, which is not a multi-million-dollar company, it's still getting off the ground, all of the setbacks that I've faced up till now have been difficult. It's not easy. And I can understand why something like 8 out of 10 businesses actually fail, because people are far less resilient than they give themselves credit for, or that most give them credit for. We have the potential to be incredibly resilient, but we most times will capitulate in the face of difficulty. But when you read stories like this and you look at the Lego story and you say, man, they did it. They had nothing. They were in debt, like incredibly in debt, where the bank could have taken their home. Like, they should have been sleeping in a car. When I heard about Post Malone, that when he was in Los Angeles, he was literally sleeping in a closet with an air mattress and a miniature fridge. It's amazing to me, because look at him today. So we have to understand that resilience is a part of this process. We have to understand that perseverance must be a part of the process. That if you want to become more than you are, you have to face difficult situations and you have to endure. There is no other way around it. So my message to you today is to be very conscious about the information that you're feeding yourself to inspire yourself. If you're reading stories about violence or things that just don't benefit you, if you're spending all of your time on social media or you're spending all of your time watching TV, but you aspire to be more, you want the body that you want the success that you want to be something more than what you are and achieve more than what you have, you need to put yourself into uncomfortable situations and you have to find inspiration. Don't find inspiration in the mediocre. Don't find inspiration in people who have never succeeded. Find inspiration in the people that are where you want to be. Listen to their story, learn from their story, and grow just like them. And understand that a part of the process is going to be you will face setbacks, you will get your ass kicked around, you will be in tough times, you will face dire measures sometimes, and even in those times where you think you can't go any lower, you will go lower. Your girlfriend and boyfriend might break up with you when you're facing a difficult time. You might lose a close family member to a death. You might, only have this one vehicle that you use to get around, and all of a sudden, now that you have no money and you're trying to raise a business, that car dies on you. There are so many things that can happen, but just stick with it. That's all they've ever said. Anyone who's made it to the other side, that's all they've ever said is do not give up. Don't ever give up. Now I get it. Sometimes you are facing more and more debt. Sometimes you're looking at the situation like, I have no friends, I have no support, I have no money, I have very little to keep this thing going. But trust me, if you put your mind to work, if you put your ambition to work, you will find a way. And if you need inspiration, pick up a book. Pick up a book and read a book of somebody who's been in that situation. Look at somebody who's where you want to be, read their story, see what they have to say, and let that inspire you.